Hello, hello, my wonderful Year 5 artists. We're carrying on with our project Change the World, and we're going to take inspiration from textile artist Aram Sifuentes, and we're going to be making some lettering today. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the letter of our first name. So mine are going to be the letters E, and we cut out a letter E out of a piece of newspaper the size of our piece of felt, and we pin it on and then cut around it. This is called having a template. When you've done this, you pin this onto your piece of fabric, your larger piece of white fabric, and you can see I'm just pinning on carefully in different places here. So poke your pins in, not into you, but into your fabric. So just to be clear, my name is Emma, so all of my letters are going to be the letter E. You only do a letter E if that's the first letter of your first name. So once we've pinned this on, we're going to stitch it on. And what we need to do is get some nice embroidery thread and thread our needle and begin to stitch it. You always start by tying a knot at the end of your thread, and you always do your first stitch from behind. We want it to look neat on this side of the fabric. It doesn't matter what the underside looks like. So we make sure we get a good knot, and then we're going to poke our needle in. You just choose anywhere where you want to start, and you begin sewing around your letter. So I'm poking it in the back, finding where I want it to come out, and there we go. I'm going to do my first stitch. So I'm doing a simple basic running stitch here where we just go in and out, do it about 3 times, and then you can pull your thread through. This is probably the simplest stitch. If you know other stitches, because some of you might like to do sewing at home, if you can do back stitch or blanket stitch, anything you like, but this is the simplest one, the running stitch, okay? So I'm just going to skip ahead. You don't need to watch me sew around the whole thing. Just a note here, when you're going around tight corners, you just want to do 1 stitch at a time. Do you remember how I did 3 or 4 before I pulled the thread through? It's easier if you just do 1 or 2 when you've got smaller edges. Now what you need to do is you need to cast off. This is where we're going to do a couple of little stitches in the fabric. It doesn't go through to the felt, so no one will see it. And you just do some nice tight stitches over the top of each other. We're kind of sort of sewing on the sewing and keeping it nice and tight. If you're worried that it's not going to stay on there, it doesn't feel secure enough, you can just tie a knot in it as well. That's fine. Whatever makes you feel more confident that it's not all going to come undone. So once you've tied your knot, you just snip off the end and you've finished that first letter. Okay, we're going to do another letter now. Now we're going to take inspiration from Kirsty Whitlock, who uses unusual materials. She doesn't just use fabric in her textiles, so she uses plastic and she uses newspaper. So we're going to use our template again. We're going to pin it onto an old piece of plastic carrier bag, and we just use our pins, exactly the same as we would do if it was a piece of material. We just go through the paper and go through the plastic and pin it on in place. You'll then do exactly the same as you did with the letter, where you're going to cut around the outside. So you simply cut around the plastic and you cut out your letter again, whatever the first initial of your name is. You take out your pins from your paper template to release that, and then you have got your plastic letter ready to sew on. Now, just as you did with the fabric, you pin this back on as well, and it just makes it so much easier. It stops it moving around, it stops you making mistakes by having that pinned into place. As soon as it's pinned into place, you're going to start sewing. Now, for this time, I'm not looking at beautiful, neat stitches. If you look at Kirsty's work, it's much more what you call dynamic. It's not all neat and tidy. So you can use giant stitches if you like. I've got a nice bit of bright orange thread because I thought that would really stand out against the dark green that I've got on my plastic. And I'm just going to do really big stitches, and I'm going to do them in different directions. Some I'm going to do them zigzag, some I'm going to do them spilling off the side of the letter E. The idea is you're just pinning it on and stitching it on any which way you can, making sure that it's nice and secure, but making it look really dynamic and lively. So just as you did with the fabric letter, you're going to cast off by doing a few nice tight stitches or tying a knot, whichever makes you feel more confident, just as long as that lovely plastic letter is not going to peel off and fall off your work. So there we are, we've got an Aram hand Sifuentes inspired letter and one inspired by Kirsty Whitlock. Now, if you get to this stage, I'm really proud of you. If this is what you manage, that is amazing. I'm really, really pleased. But some of you will be really good at sewing and really confident and really quick. So there's a couple more things you can do if you have time. The first one is you can just simply stitch a letter. I'm stitching letter E, but also you can get your template and sew that on as well, similar in the way that we did with the plastic one. Why not? So you can decide. You can do 2, you can do 3, you can do 4 letters. So I imagine if you get to the stage of doing more letters, you're probably very good at sewing and don't really need me to explain how to do it. But just in case you're having a stab for the first time, let me tell you how we do the embroidered letter. We do a double thread on this, which means we tie a knot with the 2 pieces at the end, so it makes a thicker piece of embroidery thread, and then we start sewing. Now you can do the running stitch again, where you do a stitch where you go in and out, and we can just do it like that, or you can do the running stitch, and again that's entirely up to you, whichever you prefer. Have an experiment if you've got time. If not, don't worry about it. I'm just going to show you this last letter. We pinned it on and we stitched it on using giant stitches, just like we did with the plastic one, because again I was taking inspiration from Kirsty Whitlock there. And there we go. I've done 4 letters. If you do 2, I'll be over the moon with you. That's fantastic. So we're going to just have a look at that, and we're going to insert it into our protest portfolio. Again, you can use staples or double-sided tape. I use double-sided tape on this, but remember to put it on the other half so it's not going over the fold. And that makes a great display. It shows all the work we've been doing, getting all our ideas and learning all our skills, ready for us to make our own original pieces of artwork out of textiles, using words and letters to tell the world what we want to change. So that's looking great. We close it up and we can add our name and we can add a title on it. I'm calling mine Change. You could call yours, I don't know, The Art of Protest, or Change the World, whatever you want, and keep it safe because you'll need this for next half term.